All right. Good morning, everyone. Or at least it's a nice sunny morning in San Francisco. So good evening, afternoon, night, or whatever it may be for you. It's been a while. I was out in St. Louis last week for ElmConf and Strange Loop. And before we jump into our project today, let me give you a quick rundown because all the videos, Strange Loop did an amazing job this year of posting all their talk videos up in like 2 days after the event. Actually, I think they posted a lot of the videos from the first day during the conference still. In any case, all the ElmConf videos are up on the ElmConf channel, and most of them are pretty short. It's kind of nice. You can breeze through a lot of these, and let's see. So I guess I'll try to maybe give a quick one-sentence summary of most of these. So we had Evan do the keynote, and he was talking a lot about kind of the history of Elm, the future plan, and interestingly comparing it to other languages and kind of what the development or the evolutionary process for other languages has been. So that's a really interesting one and gives a good perspective on some of the stuff that'll be coming along for Elm in the future. Let's see. Next one, Aussie had a really nice talk about using Elm in production. He does consulting for several different clients, and he talked about some of the learnings from different real world uses. Luke had a nice talk about how Elm for him has been kind of a transformative process in like allowing him to focus a lot more easily on the problem that he needs to solve rather than in the JavaScript world constantly having to deal with new tools and new libraries and fixing bugs and all those things. So that's a fun one. Let's see. Then the next ones were all lightning talks. Rich Animation has some cool demos, and if you're interested in animation stuff, that's a good one to watch to get started. Tessa gave a nice talk about functional data structures and specifically different ways to model and store binary trees in functional languages. Who is this? Oh, I forget this guy's name. He's an Elm developer in St. Louis and gave a talk about using Horizon as a real-time backend database. And Joel, this was one. This was a really cool talk about generating random names and kind of used some information like this kind of a historical experiment talking about Romans and Roman names. Jeff's talk was a really cool one demoing his interactive storytelling framework, which is a library he has published, and he has a really great demonstration of actually using it. Then Jessica Kerr gave a great talk about this tool called Atomist, which is it's not released yet, but she gave a really fascinating demo of using it to do automated refactorings, and not just simple ones either, like kind of sophisticated refactorings in Elm using the Atomist tool. And oh yeah, Murphy's was one of my favorites. He has this app that he demoed, which has a backend. It reads from Twitter. It sends stuff to Elm in a queue. The Elm app integrates with JavaScript to play sounds, and he kind of went through all the parts of that, and then at the end had an interactive demo that the crowd got to play with. And let's see, the last one was Richard talking about some really good architectural patterns in Elm and how you can model your data to prevent bugs and make tests in certain cases unnecessary, and also make your code simpler. And then there was a QA panel, which is interesting to watch if you want to see some of these speakers giving more of their opinions about different parts of Elm. So that's kind of the quick overview of all the talks. Definitely spend some time to check those out if you haven't already. But yeah, one one other thing I wanted to note about ElmConf this year was this was our first conference for the Elm community, which was great. It was exciting. But it was also quite disappointing in one regard, specifically that there were not a very good diverse, what am I trying to say here? The diversity of the crowd that attended was not particularly great, especially given that Strangeloop is a conference that's well known for its efforts in promoting diversity, getting a wide range of diverse speakers, offering scholarships for underprivileged people who have financial difficulties to be able to attend the conference. And ElmConf, being a part of Strangeloop, had a lot of the benefits of that. People who had diversity scholarships, or they're called opportunity grants for Strangeloop, were able to attend ElmConf. But despite those things, ElmConf was extremely white male centric. There were maybe 200 or 300 people there, and less than 15 women, maybe less than that even, and not many people of color either. So this is, I don't know, I guess I was kind of shocked at the level, or the degree to which that was the case. So I just wanted to, I guess, raise that as something for people to be aware of. Diversity in tech has been a notable and kind of a more mainstream issue in the past couple of years. And as we're building this community for Elm, I want people to keep in mind the fact that diversity doesn't just come for free. And pretty much everyone I've met in the Elm community so far has been really welcoming, really positive, really interested in supporting diversity and making Elm and the Elm community an inclusive place. But it takes more than just good intentions. So yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about today, is to take notice of the places and communities you are using Elm in and learning Elm in. And if those communities aren't reflecting a good pool of diverse people, diverse learners, diverse programmers, I would challenge you to start asking the question of why that's the case. Are there a few women in your local Elm community, if you have a local Elm community? If so, why is that the case? And what can you do to help change that? Is it that the word is just not getting out to people who are interested? Are people coming and not coming back for some reason? There's a lot of debugging work we're going to have to do over the coming year. So that's kind of a goal for myself, is to make sure that the next ElmConf is better represented by women, by people of color, and that the community as a whole is not just trying to be supportive of underrepresented people, but actually taking some active steps to make a difference and to create a community as Elm grows that has learned from all of the talk in the last couple of years about how to improve diversity, improve the pipeline, improve inclusivity, and encourage and promote people based on their value as people and not on sexist or racist mentalities from the past. All right. So that was a bit of a rant on that. So let's get into our project today. So we're going to be continuing a project that we started a few weeks ago. And actually there was kind of a timely tweet that I just noticed this morning about racism. This is a poster of a woman holding up a sign saying, "We live in a world where trained cops can panic and act on impulse, but untrained civilians must remain calm with a gun in their face." And I think that's a message that really resonates with me with all the recent talk about police violence in the United States, where I live. Um, so yeah, we started a project several weeks ago, which was an idea I had from back in July, with the recent incidents then being Anton Sterling and Philando Castile. Sorry, Alton Sterling. It's hard to keep my thoughts straight when recording. So yeah, we started a project back then, which the link is down in the bottom right corner for today of what we started back then. We were basically building a form where people could enter their zip code and start recording information that they found about their local police departments, their police chiefs, and the mayors and governors, and get a sense of what their elected leadership's stance on racism and on police reform and police education and training was. So the idea for that project was kind of, I guess, my own thoughts trying to deal with what was happening back in July. Since then, I have been thinking about it a lot more and doing some research, trying to educate myself about ally skills, about Black Lives Matter in general, about other issues of diversity, and how we can best serve those things. So I think what I've come to realize is that there are a lot of movements and organizations and leadership already that are being led by Black leaders in the movement. Specifically, Black Lives Matter is kind of a distributed movement, but there's a specific campaign called Campaign Zero, which is also linked in the bottom right corner. And here, if you've heard a lot about Black Lives Matter and are wondering what are actionable steps, Campaign Zero lays out 10 specific reforms that they are advocating. And there's a lot of details on this website where you can read information, in a lot of cases, science and studies that back up some of these recommendations. And on several of these pages, you can also see where U.S. candidates and cities stand on a lot of these issues currently. So there's a lot of information there. I want to recommend to people that the biggest thing I think you can do is not write code to try to help with this, but educating yourself in the first place, understanding especially the local issues and the leaders in your local community and what their positions are and whether you need to be making an informed voting decision coming up in November. So yeah, I just wanted to share that before we jump into code today, that if you're really interested in making an impact, I would suggest taking the time that you may be dedicating to watching ElmConf or Strange Loop videos and spend an hour or two of that educating yourself on Wikipedia or watching videos from the news or just understanding more about the issues at hand. So, with that said, here's how I'm thinking about this project that we're working on today, because we're going to be looking at using Firebase as a hosted backend. It's a real-time database, which was recently bought by Google. So I think one of the exciting things for me about Elm, and is actually something that that Luke's talk at ElmConf talked about, is that the vision in my mind for Elm is that we have a language that lets us write and get apps up running quickly that are robust and that are basically based off of modeling the data and doing things simply. So kind of my goal in what we're working on today is to lay out some patterns and potentially make reusable libraries that would allow someone, if there was a social justice issue that they wanted to stand up a website for, that they would be able to use Elm potentially as a platform to quickly stand up a website in a day or two and rally a community around that. So I definitely think for Black Lives Matter, I am not at all the person to be doing that. There are other great efforts already underway. So if you want to do something to help those efforts, and you should, take the time to do that and contribute. And now let's get to some code and potentially make Elm a nicer place and an easier place to build web apps for future social justice causes. So, what do we have already? So what we built last time was a form which basically let you choose your zip code, enter some information about the police department and the police officers in that district. So I think, let's just get this up and running real quick. I'm going to open a separate tab, and we were using FS Watch last time to run, basically to recompile Elm. Make that a little bigger. I'm going to leave this FS Watch command running here, and this should recompile every time we modify this form.elm. Cool, and it does. I'm actually going to change this to just watch all Elm files. Let's try that out again. Cool. So now every time I save an Elm file in here, it's going to recompile everything. Great. So now let's also start up Elm Reactor. And then we should be able to go to localhost, go to our form.html, and here we have our form. And we've got some buttons. This was the project where we pulled in custom CSS, which is why we have a custom HTML file here as well. And we can enter information in here. And that's where we ended, I believe, where we basically tied these multiple forms together. And let's see. Okay. In the chat, Arkham is asking about what steps can someone take to help debug issues of diversity. Actually, there was a really interesting talk at Strangeloop. Let me bring this up real quick. That Anwan Simmons gave, which is in fact called Debugging Diversity. Let's see, the video is down here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So this doesn't go into a ton of specific detail, but it is a really accessible talk, I think. And it kind of goes through, he's making a comparison between skills that you use as a programmer to do debugging and how you can apply those same skills to the issues of diversity. So this is a really cool talk that I saw when I was at Strangeloop. I'd recommend it. He also, if you look him up on Twitter, he also gave a slightly different talk at GitHub Universe, which was a few days before Strangeloop. And I haven't watched that one yet, but I believe he goes into more detail about some of the specific steps you can take as an ally. So that's a good place to start if you don't know where else to start. And yeah, I'm also happy to chat on Twitter or in the Elm community Slack. Let's see. Arkham's also suggesting using the ElmLive tool rather than FS Watch. Let's look that up. Whoops. Generator, flexible dev server. Ah, I have not looked at this before. Cool. That looks worth looking into. And let's see, the full fswatch command is you say fswatch and then some files, and then you can. What this does is just print out the name of the file that changes when it changes. So then I'm piping it to this xargs command with n equals 1. This is defining the placeholder. Oh, I don't actually need that anymore because I deleted the placeholder. So the second part is saying whenever I get, for each line that I get, that's what the n1 is, run this command. So fswatch is going to print a line out whenever a file changes, and then xargs, whenever it sees a new line printed, it's going to run this command. So that's how that all works. But yeah, if we have some time at the end, we can look into the ElmLive tool. I guess it's confusing since I call this show ElmLive. All right. So yes, I wanted to show the form, and then I don't think we want to jump right into the form. I think I want to start with the kind of landing page and have that show information that we're going to get from Firebase. So what we're going to be working towards today is having Firebase as a backend where we can upload, users can upload the form information. And then also, we'll be able to read information out of the database and see that update in real time. All right, so to get started, let's head over to Firebase. And I think it's pretty easy to get an account. If you're logged in with a Google account, you can just start using this. Whoops. See, so let's hit get started. And we'll make a new project. And let's see. Call this police reform. Create it. And then we click this pink button over here, and it gives us our code that we just need to pop into a JavaScript file. Let's copy that. And I'm going to start with a new file. Let's see. Let's just call this Firebase HTML for the moment. This will probably be our landing page and our index page in a moment. And we'll paste that in. And then let's see if we can load this now. Firebase.html. And I'll bring up the JavaScript console. Great, so it looks like there's no errors. So let's see what we can do with this then. So we have a database tab over here in Firebase. The way Firebase works is your whole database is basically just one big JSON document. And you can subscribe or post data to subkeys within it. So I guess what we should try to do first is two things. Let's see if we can write some data in JavaScript, and then let's see if we can read some data from JavaScript. So let's find the documentation for this. I would expect it to be in here somewhere. maybe here, database. So let's get started. Help. Developer docs, there we go. Hello, Mr. Whole Milk. Yes, the game we are playing today is build a web application with real-time data sharing between users. And I think it's kind of too early to tell who's winning so far. Hopefully we will be victorious. All right, so real-time database, there's a section for web, and there's a get started over here. So we did the initialization, and we can get a reference to our database. I don't think we did that yet. Let's copy that over. And then learn how to start saving and retrieving data. Let's check that out. Okay, so we've got a set, a push, update, and transaction. Oh, interesting. I didn't know Firebase lets you do multiple updates in a transaction. Okay, so here's an example. It looks like they get the database, which we already got. We use the ref, or we specify a ref, which is a path into the database, and then we can call set with some stuff. So let's try this out and see if it works. I'm just going to replace this with database since we saved that as a variable here. User's user ID. Okay, so we haven't defined any of this stuff. I'm just going to hard code some stuff. Say TBD for the user ID. The name is name1. Email is email1. Sorry, I'm not particularly creative at the moment. And then the profile picture. Shoot. What was the profile? Those websites that let you get just random cat photos. Placeholder images. There's one. I think the cat one doesn't work anymore, but there's a place kitten was what it used to be called. I don't think that one works anymore, but place bear works. Let's use a place bear for our profile picture. All right, so let's try this out and see if the JavaScript runs without error. So I'll refresh over here. And okay, we got a warning permission denied, and then we got an error permission denied. Right. Okay. So let's take a look at Firebase. So now we've got to learn a little bit about permission rules in Firebase. And it's saying here, default security rules require the user to be authenticated. Okay. So there's a couple things to know about Firebase. One is there's an authentication module, and you can set up sign-up methods in here to use Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, anonymous users. I was playing with this a little bit yesterday and was having trouble using it on localhost. I don't know, I didn't quite figure out why. So if we have some time, maybe we'll get to looking at that later. So what I'm going to do for now instead is go to the rules for the database, and in here you can define different permission rules for different parts of the database. So if you go to this learn more, you can read a lot more about how to do it. You can give different access rules to different parts of the database structure. But for now, this is just saying in order to read anything or write anything, you just have to be authenticated. So rather than that, I'm going to comment those out. And instead, put new rules that just put true in here and say that anyone is allowed to read and write to this database. And we'll publish that. Let's try reloading this. And how it goes. Okay, there's no error. Let's see if the data got sent. Hey, and there's our data. So yeah, you can see this ref path is just kind of a key path in the database, users TBD, and then all the values that we added are in here. Cool. So that is working code to write things. I'm just going to comment that out for now, and we will hook that into Elm a little bit later. So for now, let's try doing a read. Seems like the next thing we need to be able to do. And let's see, in the chat, Mikey's asking if we enabled anonymous authentication, would this be the same thing? No. So what anonymous authentication does is, first of all, there's a JavaScript function call that you have to call in order to create an anonymous user. And then I believe that anonymous user has an ID, which is stored in a session cookie on the browser. So you actually have a user object and a user ID associated with the anonymous users, and then you could have, for instance, the database rules could still require auth, but people could potentially be authed as an anonymous user. I know you can also write rules where you check what type of authentication the user has logged in as. So you could, I assume, write a rule where you allow writes from users authenticated with Google or with Facebook or with email and password, and prevent users who are authenticated as anonymous users. So that's slightly different, but the reason you'd use anonymous users is if you wanted to allow them to associate data with themselves, but then like sign up for your app at a later time. So they could start making data, and if they came back on the same browser, they would see all that data. But then later they would have the option of signing up and converting their anonymous account into an account that's linked with one of the auth providers. All right. So let's start thinking about the data model that we're going to be using for this example police reform tracking app. So what I'd like to do is, okay, so in here, I'm just going to start adding an object to kind of represent the sketch of the schema that I want to use. So I think I'm going to have a, what's it called? I guess a collection of objects called zip codes. And then inside of that, we're going to have, so this will be the ID. I'll use the actual zip code as the ID. And then in there, we're going to have police chief, let's say. And then in there, we'll have their name. And I'll just put question marks for now. So in Firebase, you aren't allowed to create empty objects. You've got to put values inside of them. So that's why I'm doing all of this at once. Okay, so here we've created this zip code data structure. And what I'd like to do in the JavaScript now is subscribe to this particular zip code. And yet we should be able to get this JSON underneath that out. And if that works, then that'll be great. And then we can start hooking up our Elm. So let's go back to the docs and try to retrieve data. Retrieve data. Okay, so you can listen for these types of events. You can listen for value. I think this is what we'll want. We want to listen for any changes under the zip code path that we're interested in. To add one, use the on method. And it doesn't give an example. Oh, here we go. Okay, so they've taken the database. They're defining a ref, which is a particular path. So for us, that'll be the zip code /94107. And then we are subscribing to value events. And then, all right, they get a snapshot. This must be something they defined. Okay, snapshot.val. I'm assuming that's how we get the data out of this snapshot event. So let's give that a try. So we'll say database.ref zip codes /94107 .on value change function snapshot. Use the same name that they did. Shrink this up a little bit. And then let's log the snapshot.val. We get one. All right. So let's try this out. I'm going to refresh. And okay, we got an object here. And police chief has the name. Great. Cool. So the other thing that we should automatically get for free is that this is subscribing. So if there are any changes made by anyone else, we should automatically get an event pushed to us. So I'm going to make a change here in the dashboard. So the police chief here is, I think, Tony Chaplin. Let's check that. He's just an interim police chief. Actually kind of interesting. The previous chief, Greg Sewer, had all kinds of scandals and people were trying to push him out. And then when the shooting of, what was it, Jessica Williams? When Jessica Williams was shot and killed by a police officer, then the mayor, Ed Lee, asked Greg Sewer to resign and interestingly instated Tony Chaplin, a black officer, promoted to interim chief. But what's interesting about that is that Ed Lee was a strong supporter of Greg Sewer up till that time. So, I don't know. To me, it seems like kind of a fishy move that he asked for his resignation at that point after supporting him for such a long time. Yeah, one of the other interesting things I was learning about San Francisco police is that even though Greg Sewer had a lot of problems in his past record, he became the police chief kind of on the ticket, I guess, of reforming the police, and he just was not able to institute any changes because the police force under him just was not respecting the way that he was trying to push down changes onto them. So there was an interesting article I was reading about. So now, even though Tony Chaplin is the new police chief, will he be able to make the reform changes that he is promoting? It remains to be seen, because the culture of the police department, in particular the sergeants in the San Francisco police, are not particularly open to the idea of reform. So there's kind of a big cultural problem that needs to be tackled, apart from just changing the leadership. That's kind of an interesting problem that San Francisco is going to have to tackle. Okay, so in any case, I've typed this change in, and as soon as I hit enter, we should see, hopefully, a change pushed to our web page. And hey, we got it almost instantly. So here's the new value we got, and we got the change name. Great. So that all looks good. And yes, upgraded. I won't be saving this broadcast on Twitch, but I we'll be uploading it to YouTube in the next day or two. So if you follow my Twitter, which is at avh4, then you can find those easily. All right. So where are we at? We've basically demonstrated that we can hook Firebase up in this HTML file. We haven't done any Elm yet, but from JavaScript, we have written data, and we've been able to read and subscribe to data. So I think that's a good start. We've been going for about 45 minutes. So I am going to take a quick break and grab some water for myself. If you need to do anything on, what am I trying to say? I was going to say take a bathroom break or get water for yourself, but I'm sure you can all handle that on your own. Yeah, if you have nothing better to do, maybe take a few minutes and research the police department in your local community and see what the stance on police violence and police reform is. And we will be back in just a few minutes, and then we will get our Elm integration going with Firebase. All right, see you soon.